Hello, I'm Casey Openshaw Haycock. I'm an occupational therapist, a business owner, a mom, and someone who has learned that the most important parts of being an OT never makes it into your documentation. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know that my son Theo keeps me humble. He's funny, stubborn, endlessly curious, and I'm convinced that every stick we find outside deserves to come home with us. If you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One minute you're on the way to the car, the next minute you're negotiating over whether a rock, a worm, and a stick are all members of the family now. Long before I became a mom, I loved working with kids. And after I became Theo's mom, I finally understood their parents. You know, you would always say, when I have kids, my kid would never. And here we are, never, nevering. Every time I drop Theo off at school, I have this same quiet hope. I hope someone notices him. I hope someone gives him grace when he's having a hard day. I hope someone celebrates the little victories that most people would never notice. And I hope someone sees the amazing little boy that I see. And then I remember that every parent feels this way. Every foster parent, every grandparent raising their grandchildren, every adoptive parent, and every caregiver who's doing the very best that they can. We all want one thing: for someone to be in our child's corner. I've been an occupational therapist for a long time. I've worked in Massachusetts, Texas, Florida, Colorado, and now I'm back here in Maine. And there are kids from every single one of those places that I still think about. It's funny. I don't remember every evaluation I've ever wrote. I definitely don't remember every insurance authorization. And I couldn't tell you every CPT code that I've billed, but I will remember the kids. I will remember the little girl who laughed so hard she'd snort. I remember this little girl that I my friend Tawny had came to visit me in Texas, and we went to a concert. It was in Dallas, and it was like 2.5 hours from where I lived. And we drove up there that night and drove back, and I had a client to see in the morning, and she goes, "Miss Casey, why you look so bad today?" I was like, "Well, a little tired, had a long night." But there I was, showing up. Um, Little boy who was terrified with swings until one day he asked for one more push. The child who worked for months just to button one button. And now that kid's 17. He was, 4 when I started seeing him. So that'll just tell you how long I've been doing this. The teenager who finally looked me in the eye and believed me when I said, "You can do this. You've got this." Those are the moments that stay with you. Sometimes I'll be driving home or watching Theo play or making dinner, and one of those kids will randomly pop into my head, and I'll wonder how they're doing. I hope they're okay. I hope they have someone who's still cheering for them, because working in pediatrics has shown me some of the most beautiful moments that I've ever witnessed, but it's also shown me heartbreak. I've worked with children who have changed foster homes when they were in therapy. These children had been coming for a long time. They then change foster homes. The new foster family either lives too far away or doesn't want to bring them. So they're just vanished overnight. I've learned children who have finally learned our routine, who knew exactly what to do, where the swing was, where the crayons were kept, who knew who they'd walk through the doors and hear someone say, "Hi, friend, I'm so glad you're here today." And then one day they weren't. Sometimes they moved. Sometimes another therapist picked up where I left off. And sometimes I never knew. And if I'm honest, these are the kids that I wonder about the most. Not because I think I was the most important person in their life, because I probably wasn't, but maybe for 1 hour every week, I was the person in their corner. Maybe my staff was the person in their corner, and I was just there to say hi to them and support as needed. And sometimes that's enough to remind a child that they're worth showing up for. I'm asked day in and day out from my staff and other therapy people, what do you think makes a great therapist? And they usually expect me to talk about certifications, schooling, continuing education, going to, um, big conferences, experience. And while all of those things matter, I don't think they're what the families remember. And I don't think they're what makes a great therapist some of the time. Obviously, those things are really important. But I think the families and the kids are going to remember how you make them feel. Did you celebrate their child? Did you notice the little victories? Did you believe in them on days when they struggled to believe in themselves? And did you make the parents feel like they weren't failing and offer them a place of support? Because here's the truth: therapy isn't just about the child that sits across from us, it's about everyone who loves that child. A great therapist doesn't keep therapy inside the clinic. We teach, we explain, we answer questions, we call teachers, we collaborate with other professionals such as speech therapists, physical therapists, pediatricians, foster parents, caseworkers, grandparents, and whoever is working alongside that child. And a lot of the times in the day to day, we get very busy. So taking the next step to do that takes a lot, right? Um, I've been more cognizant of that and trying to provide home exercise programs and reach out and talk to other providers to tell them what we're doing in therapy and also ask them what they think would be helpful. Sometimes we explain sensory processing, sometimes emotional regulation, and sometimes retained primitive reflexes and how a children's nervous system can make everyday tasks look harder than they look. We kind of educate families and educate other professionals on this. And it's not just so parents have more information and feel overwhelmed, it's so they have more hope. Because the moment a parent understands why their child may be doing what they're doing, everything changes. They stop seeing a child who's giving them a hard time and they start seeing a child who may be having a hard time and why they're having these behaviors. And compassion grows where frustration used to live. One of my favorite moments in therapy is when a parent says, "That makes so much sense." You can almost watch the guilt leave the room. And while we're talking about guilt, can we talk about caregiver fatigue? Because it is real. I know from my experience that you can love your child with your whole heart and still be exhausted. You can be grateful and overwhelmed, and you can be patient one day and then feel like you're running on fumes the next. And that doesn't make you a bad parent, it makes you human. I've sat with parents who have apologized for crying. Please don't. I get it. If there's anybody that gets feeling overwhelmed, it's probably me. Um, I was a single parent for a long time. Now I have a very supportive, loving husband, and I have three stepkids. I have three office locations, and I am literally running on a thin thread 90% of my life. So I get it. I've sat with foster parents who wondered if they were doing enough. I've sat with grandparents raising their grandchildren. And I've looked at moms and dads who are carrying the weight of school meetings, IEPs, appointments, paperwork, sleepless nights, and 1,000 invisible worries. And sometimes the most important thing I say all day isn't to the child, it's to the parent. And a lot of the times, these parents are not getting the support that they need. Um, where are the caregiver support groups, right? The kids are getting the therapy services, but the parents are literally struggling. Um, so try, if you're a pediatric therapist, support the parents and be there for them. Um, and a lot of the times, all it takes is just for them to be told, you're doing a better job than you think you are, because caregivers need someone in their corner too. Therapy is 1 hour a week, and life is the other 167. If we can encourage the people raising the child, we've multiplied the impact of our 1 hour. And maybe that's what this whole episode is really about: showing up for kids, for parents, for foster families, for teachers, and for each others. You don't have to change the world. Sometimes changing one child's world is enough. And here's where I want to leave you. This podcast is called Notes Due at Midnight because, like so many therapists, I've spent countless nights finishing my documentation when everyone else was asleep. There were nights when I was tired, nights that I wanted to do nothing more but to close my laptop, and nights when the clock read 12:07, 12:43, 1:18 in the morning. And then I'd finally close my laptop and I'd still be thinking about these kids. And I'd remind myself, this note isn't just another note. It's someone's child, someone's whole world. It's the little girl who's finally tolerated brushing her hair, a little boy who'd look another child in the eyes for the first time, a foster child who felt safe for 1 hour out of their week, a parent who finally felt understood. These notes were never really about the paperwork. They're about people. And maybe that's true for life too. The things that matter most aren't always the things that get recognized. We all often sweep them under the rug because if you're like me, you're busy doing other things. But they're the quiet moments, the encouraging words, the extra 5 minutes, the phone call to a teacher, the extra hug before bed, and the 17 glasses of water your kid might need during their bedtime routine. It's the therapist who remembered the kid's favorite color, the foster parent who kept showing up, and the teacher that refused to give up. These are the stories that change lives. So if you're listening and you're tired, and if you're wondering whether what you're doing matters, it does. Someone is stronger because you kept showing up. Someone feels seen because you noticed. And someone has hope because you believed in them before you believed in themselves. And that's a legacy worth staying up past midnight for. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. This is Notes Due at Midnight. And until next week, remember this. Sometimes the most important thing you'll ever write isn't the note that's due at midnight. It's the story you help a child believe about themselves. And that story lasts long after the paperwork is finished. Thank you.